It's time for Show Me the Franchise
with Thomas and Frederick. With Thomas and Frederick.
It's time for Show Me the Franchise
With Thomas and Frederick. With Thomas and Frederick.
Welcome to the very first Patreon episode of Show Me the Franchise. I am one of your hosts, Tom Stadler, here with, as usual, the Patreon king himself, the high mighty man of steel and showmanship. Hey. Mr. Fred Dakin.
This is already great. I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome behind the scenes to the VIP section of a Patreon episode.
That's right. We are bringing you new, different, special content.
Mm-hmm. We're giving you a taste of something that will be a little extra, a little premium content that we'll be dishing out.
Yeah, so even though we're asking you to stretch your wallets a little bit, I think you're going to find that this will be well worth the investment.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you're going to have to talk to your money guy. I understand. You're going to have to run this one by, whoever you share your accounts with. It's going to be an investment, but it's going to be worth it.
It is going to be worth it, Fred, because I think as we also stretch the term franchise on our regular feed podcast, the Patreon's an opportunity for us to kind of go after some different things, some more focused things that we just have not been able to have time for before because we are trying to cover these gigantic franchises.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we're going to go in deep, and we're also going to have fun, I think, with the how we do the episode. We're going to approach it different ways, do different things. I think it's going to be a good opportunity for us to get a little weird with it, too.
Oh, I like that idea.
Yeah.
Getting weird with it.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's going to be fun, though, because I think there have always been times where it's like, oh, yeah, like we were just talking about before, Popeyes now has wings. Like, that completely missed the window of our wings episode. So is there something we could do there?
Definitely. Are there people that could come back to talk about that? Who knows?
Yeah. And I think you guys are going to love it. It's going to be a fun opportunity for Fred and I to really kind of stretch our knowledge even further and get deeper into these topics.
It's more of what you love. It's more episodes of us.
So from this time forward, what can we pitch to you on what to expect? Well, of course, there will be a small nominal monthly fee. But as Fred said, it's going to be worth it.
Oh, yeah.
It will not stretch your wallets too far. I think Fred and I are not here to give you the most expensive premiere stuff, but, it's going to still be, a little bit of money out of your wallet, but it's helping us keep the show going. The reason that we're even asking for money and doing this in the first place is because we are just trying to keep our funds going so that we can actually pay for the hosting fees and all of that stuff. I think what we really want to do is just keep ourselves going, keep ourselves afloat so that, this does become a little bit more for all of you, where we can really become the great podcast that we already know we are.
Yes. So what you're going to be getting is more episodes. We're still figuring out how that's going to come out, but you are getting more content. And like you said before, we're going to be covering topics at I don't know how you would describe it more than just in depth, and also picking ones that we wouldn't necessarily cover a whole main feed episode on.
Right.
Something that we might not talk, hour and a half to 2 hours about.
Well, yeah, because there's certainly new directors who have exciting catalogs, but maybe they don't have a lot of movies to talk about. Maybe there is a specific character from a series that's worth talking about, like Frasier, who it's do you talk about all of Frasier? Or do you talk about all of Cheers? Or do you just talk about Frasier Crane? I'm listening.
Or just the reboot.
Or just, I almost forgot there was a reboot.
Mm-hmm.
Does that count as part of the same Frasier canon, though?
I don't know. I did watch it, but I don't know what they're going at. He lives in Boston in the new ones.
So it's different.
It's different. I will say, for another thing that we would talk about doing, like an example, when we've been talking about setting up the Patreon for a while, an example of episode we might do would be they just had that Echo series. Mm. We might just do an episode on that mini series.
Yeah.
Something that happened recently that people are talking about. We're going to maybe try to get some of that too.
Yeah. The possibilities are endless too. So I think we're going to just kind of go where the wind takes us. And I like the way you phrased that, Fred. So if you guys have demand too, you can obviously reach out to us too by checking the email in our link tree in the podcast description. But Fred, I think talking about TV is the perfect segue to what we're talking about today, because that's exactly what we're going to talk about. The best TV of 2023.
Ooh, I love it. It's kind of like almost rhymes.
Yeah.
It's like an Eminem rhyme where it's a little forced, but it sounds good when you say it. You know, like the best TV of 2023.
All your eyes gonna look at me. Well, I guess in this case, your ears are gonna listen to me versus eyes, but
Your ears
yes,
are gonna listen to me.
your ears are gonna listen to me and they're gonna love it. But yeah, I think 2023 was a very exciting year for television, Fred.
It was a good movie year and a good TV year.
It was just a great media year all around, I feel like, because right now we're in a time in the streaming era where TV and movies starting to blur the lines a little bit, because you have a lot of creators who are treating TV seasons like as limited series that would be just a very long movie. And likewise, you have other creators who are making movies that kind of feel episodic, you know, not too off of like what we just saw with Dune coming out recently.
Yeah, a critique you hear about movies and television now more and more is should have been a TV show or should have been a movie.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny because the lines are so blurred right now.
We got those blurred lines. Yeah, we're not here to push a song with a problematic creator, though. So anyway, getting into our episode here. So we are going to obviously go a little off script of what we normally do. We're not going to give you all the history and all that. We're just going to give you the thing you're here for. What were the best TV shows we saw, and who were some of the best people in those shows? So, Fred, I know we had gathered ourselves a list here, and for this one, we actually kept our picks known to each other. We usually don't tell each other what we're going to vote for or pick.
Yeah, we like the element of surprise, but this is the Patreon. It's tight. It's entertaining. And I don't have a third thing. It's just tight and entertaining.
I mean, does it need to be more than that?
No.
You get a little T&E, and that's all it is.
Yeah, T&E. That's what you're here for in the Patreon episode.
Yeah, you may go to OnlyFans to get some TNA, but you come here for some T&E. So let's talk a little bit about our shows. Now, do you want to start from the bottom of the list? Like, do you want to start from like maybe even what missed your cut and then start going from 10 to 1? Or do you want to start from the top and give them the goods right out the gate here?
I always like to start from the bottom and rise to the top.
It's like the cream, we rise to the top.
Like a nice sourdough.
Oh, gosh. I saw sourdough starter at Costco. I'm a proud new Costco membership for all the listeners out there. Or a member.
Folks, if you want to know where your Patreon money is going.
It's going to Costco. That's exactly where all that money's going. But yes, I'm a new Costco member, not a new membership. But I have a new Costco membership. I saw sourdough starter there, and I was like, they really do have everything. Have you ever bought sourdough starter or used it?
No, I have not. It scares me. But I want to be a sourdough guy.
I
so
know.
bad.
I was just like, I want to be able to make the starter myself. But then mostly I just want to try and use it and see if I can do it.
Folks, see, this could be a Patreon episode. The sourdough startup.
How to do it, and maybe it's all about recipes. We did talk about Alton Brown. We could always just get back into some of his recipes. Ooh, man, don't tempt me with a good time. So I guess for you, Fred, what just missed the cut for your list of top 10 TV shows?
So the big one for me that I guess I have two that I really wanted to work into my top 10. And I'll just say both now because I'm sure one we're going to talk about later. Fargo. I was very happy for Fargo to come back with a good season. It is just scraping like of my top 10 of like my TV shows. And also Justified came back in a very interesting way where they went back and adapted a novel from the same author about a different character, but just kind of lifted the Raylan Givens character into this story and just made like a one-off season.
Interesting.
I mean, I will say it does leave it open-ended for more, but it was nice seeing my friend back and some other friends from the show. Those were two that I really enjoyed, but my 10 is my 10.
I mean, your 10 is your 10, and you can't go off of that list. I mean, that's when you know it's right, it's right.
Mhm.
I will say, and because maybe it did make my list, Fargo, I would love to talk, because I think we also left some loose threads from our actual Fargo franchise episodes. So this is our chance to really wrap up our thoughts on season 5. But I mean, I really loved it, so I can't wait to talk a little bit more about that. But I've never seen Justified.
Justify would be a fun one. I know we had Pedro on the podcast to talk about Quentin Tarantino. He's a big Justified fan. I'd love to have him come back for like a main feed Justified up.
Oh, I'm in for it. But give me a reason to watch it finally. I'm going to mention a couple other shows because I don't think I had anything that just missed the list from your list. But I mean, I actually never finished. Well, I'll wait till we get into that. There's a couple of shows I was watching. I'm like, oh, I did start that, but I never finished it. That's like the reason I didn't put it on there. But the ones I want to call out specifically, and I think we kind of have to call this one out because it was interesting. It didn't make either of our top 10. Barry season 4.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Barry's season 4. I liked the show Barry. I felt I didn't like it as much as like there are some real Barry heads out there. I feel like people like love that show, and I think it was well earned. It just again like didn't quite make it for me, and it was never my favorite show. But I was there I watched it every week. And I love seeing Bill Hader, flex his acting muscles and directorial muscles. It makes me very excited for. I think he's got a deal to make 2 films.
Oh, really?
And I know one of them's a horror movie, and so I'm very excited to see him do a feature because I think that's probably what he wants to do.
It kind of seems like, this was sort of his test drive to get into it. So yeah, I did really like Barry overall. I think season 4, I liked it. I don't know that I loved it, especially the ending. I think kind of like, I was like, it's fine. It just did, finales are difficult, and we'll talk a little bit about a couple of them here because some of them did it very well. But yeah, I think that was one that was sort of like, I can't believe that didn't make my list. But the other one I did want to call out, only because I think it was just a true just missed the list, was Kunk on Earth. Did you watch any of that?
I did not. I saw the ads for it. Tell me about that.
So Kunk on Earth is like, so there's like a character from like British TV. It's a character played by an actress who she's done multiple features, who I think her name is Philomena Kunk is the character name. That's not her actual name. I think the actress's name is Diane Morgan. But yes, Philomena Kunk is her name. And basically her whole spiel and like what her whole thing was is on British TV, so like BBC, she does these specials where she goes and talks to like professionals and like real people about like topics. So like history or like Shakespeare plays. Like she did a whole series about like, it was called Kunk on Shakespeare. And I think it's just the fact that the last name Kunk is such an ugly word to even say out loud that you get that. But what's funny about the show is she'll go and talk to like these people who are like these like seasoned like scholars who have like spent their whole life doing this, and she'll just ask the most ridiculous questions, but in such a dry way, like you're watching a CNN interview. She's like, so Bill Shakespeare was a cannibal then? And they'll just be like, well, no, he wasn't a cannibal. And they're just so matter of fact and very like professional about like, no, he wasn't a cannibal. Like he was just a man who enjoyed meat. But he enjoyed the taste of flesh, or something like that. And then it's just this like, so Kunk on Earth is her doing like history of the world basically, and so she's like, it's her series previous to that were very British specific, and they're like kind of relying on you to know British like pop culture and all that.
Right.
But this was a little more translatable because it is very like, here's worldwide knowledge. Like most people in the world would know a lot of this stuff. So. Very much a series that I would recommend people check out. And then the other one, I mean, I thought about a couple of these. I'll just pop them off real quick. I'm not going to say much about them. Star Trek Strange New Worlds is a very fun show. Gen V, which is the spinoff of The Boys. Jury Duty, I thought was very funny.
I did not. I'm very excited to watch that. That's one I feel with TV. I hear about shows and I'll just like pocket them and I'll be like, I'm not in a hurry to watch this, but I know when I watch this, I'm going to thoroughly enjoy it. So I'm very excited for jury duty.
Yeah, it's a fun watch. I think the only thing I dinged about is like I don't know if it would ever be as good watching the second time, but I did watch it with my fiance, and she watched it for the second time and really liked it too. So
Nice. And I haven't had anything like spoil. I know kind of the gist, but I don't know like what the secret sauce to the show is. So I'm very excited to check it out.
yeah, so I'll keep everything off the table. The last thing I will say, there's a show called Killing It, and this was, I think, the true, other than Kunk on Earth, was like a true, like, I really wanted to put this in the top 10, and I just could not force myself to. That's with Craig Robinson, where he's
Claudia O'Doherty, right? O'Doherty? Something like that?
Yeah. And it's very funny. It's got a lot of people that everybody likes in it. But it's just it's kind of a cringy show, but they're a very funny pair. They're just kind of an odd pair, and yeah, I would definitely suggest anyone check that out.
Yeah, I heard an interview with the creator just talking about the genesis of that show being like how everyone having these large reptiles as pets and laying them out in the Everglades has like ruined the ecology of the Everglades in a way where like there's audio samples of the Everglades in the 70s that are just like loud and booming and full of noise. But now if you listen to it, it's like dead quiet because like all the small bugs, all the little things have been like killed by boa constrictors and just big snakes. And it's a comedy show. So if you don't know the show I'm talking about, you're probably like, what are you talking about? But it is about people who like kill like snakes and big animals in Florida that are like hazardous, right? Isn't that the
Yeah,
but it's a comedy.
It is. It's a little bit of a darker comedy, but it's still very funny. Like I think you're gonna find you laughing more than you're like, oh God, like that's so morbid. Like but it's definitely a show where, and there's not too much like snake killing. It's not gory. I would say some of that stuff you do get at some moments, but that's just kind of dark comedy in general.
Right.
You're gonna have some of that. It's more about the people and kind of their circumstances that brought them to go and do this. So,
And I just thought that was interesting background to start a comedy show. So I've watched a few episodes. I like it. I'm interested to check out more.
yeah, definitely. But let's talk about the shows that did make the top 10. Do you want to start with your number 10?
Sure. And I have it here, but I'm going off of my memory because I know my number 10, I believe, is The Curse.
It is.
Which is like the soup of A24, Nathan Fielder, and the Safdie brothers. I think kind of the last Safdie brothers project for a while now because I think they kind of split off.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting show. It's another show that, and this was the year in TV movies that dealt with a lot of indigenous stories.
Yes.
This is more like from the white perspective, taking from the indigenous population, but it is very clunky and cloudy show. But the moments and what, like when they hit what they're trying to do, it was some of the best TV for me. It just was kind of scatterbrained, and also the ending did not work for me.
I have not finished it yet. I did start, I think I got about 3 episodes in, and I know that it is like the classic Fielder show. And I mean, but even then I was just like, what is happening here? And I do think that subject matter is really interesting with like, yeah, here's like the white people that are still kind of like appropriating native culture and all that. But still, it was, I don't know how it ends, but I can't imagine it's going to be, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's got a lot of interesting points. And I also love a TV show that like isn't necessarily a cohesive piece, but is kind of experimentally trying all these different things, which it does do. I also think it probably has the best Emma Stone performance of the year.
Oh, wow.
And I love her in Poor Things, but I'm just saying, like, if I'm looking at both, her and The Curse, I think is something to behold. I think she's doing these very smaller kind of acting things versus Poor Things.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think there's like this great scene where they own all these shops for their fake show that they're making. And they're kind of like a couple you would see on HGTV who like go into communities and build up houses. But the show is kind of about the bullshit of that. Like they don't get into it in the show, but something that I heard about these shows where they fix up people's houses and then they move the van and they show the new house or whatever. What they'll do is they'll keep the family up like all night and keep them super jazzed, so they have this big cathartic emotional like experience when they do see the house. And the curse is also kind of trafficking in that and like the phoniness of these kind of shows, which is very interesting. But the three performances, very cool seeing Nathan Fielder. Even though he's doing the Nathan Fielder thing, he's also adding a layer of this isn't real. And I also think it's a really good Benny Safdie performance. Like, and it's kind of like, I think this is probably like his real life id and like his worst tendencies as a person, because you see interviews with him, he's very kind of like, I'm mixed on him as a guy, but I love him as like a creator and like an actor. But like I can just see like, oh, you really put like your demons and all that into this like really weird character.
Yeah, because he is a very out there type dude who does feel just a little bit like, I don't know. Like, I mean, there's a whole moment, I think, even in episode 3 where they kind of talk about like why he's like not able to drive and all that stuff, or just like why he's like got like issues driving. And I don't know. I'm like, God, this is dark. Like, it just seems like maybe he is, kind of putting a little bit of himself, which I think is kind of what Nathan Fielder really likes to emphasize too with a lot of his work, is he puts himself at least a little bit into every role. What was the Nathan Fielder show on HBO?
The Rehearsal.
Yeah, and like that got so meta and so weird that I'm like, only he could come up with some shit like that. That was 2022, right? Like that.
The Rehearsal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like that, because if not, we should be talking about that show. But
and I couldn't put it higher, but I think The Curse is something people should check out.
I think it's something I want to finish. I've just tried to.
I could see it being one you like get an episode in every few months, just kind of like, oh, okay, we'll get there.
Yeah, it is a little Curb Your Enthusiasm. I feel like sometimes where you're just like, you cringe so hard, you're like, I can only handle so much of this. Like, I had to do Curb, like when I was watching through that the whole time, just in spurts. I was like, nope. All right, did a season. I'm good for a bit. I need some palate breaker here, or just a palate cleanser. Yeah, no, Curse, definitely interested in learning more about that. Then Fargo season 5 was my number 10. And I know we left some threads on, we made it maybe about 8 episodes into the season. So we got to see the ending, which we have to talk about the ending.
Yes, I would say, I'll just say to get like my general points out of the way about Fargo is I thought it started extremely strong. There was moments I really liked throughout, and then I thought the last episode, the last 20 minutes, was some of the best Fargo TV stuff of the whole series.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, because, and now we'll get completely into spoilers, which, by the way, if you're listening to this or this episode or this podcast, like, you should probably be prepared that we'll probably be talking about a lot of spoilers for some of the seasons here that we're going to cover. And I know you kept it probably on behalf, I would imagine, for The Curse. But like, you know, if there were like certain spoiler things you wanted to share with that.
Oh,
like,
for sure.
Like you can dive in. So that's just a spoiler alert for you. Obviously, you guys can fast forward a little bit. But I think for Fargo, we got to dive in right to the end because we've said a little bit about it. And I think I agree with you. Like, I think it was a good comeback season from season 4 altogether. Like, I think it's one of my favorites. I'd still maybe rate it as like the second or third best season though overall. But that last 20 minutes, so unexpected. So, because we had that, what's his name? Ole Munk? Or
yes.
And him showing up at her house, and you're like, oh, it's going to go down. Like, this is going to end. But there's some like the most memeable, like gifable moments in that last interaction.
Definitely.
Like the fucking husband, what's his name? What was Dot's husband's name again? I can't think of it now. Wayne.
Wayne.
Him clinking the soda bottle after he gives it to
Yes. I think, what that last scene does, which when Fargo's at its best is doing, is taking Coen Brothers materials and recycling, repurposing them in a different situation. And that final scene is kind of like the more optimistic, version of the end of No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
Very much Anton Chigurh and I can't think of her name in it. Sue Ellen or Ellen is the main guy. It's his wife. And at the end when he kind of confronts her, it's that scene, but done completely different with the different context of the characters and their situation.
Right.
But it's that same suspense.
Right. Because I think what's so big about this episode is like the resolution of like the main thread with like John Hamm's character ends in like the first 10-20 minutes of the episode. And you're kind of left wondering, okay, this is usually a 40-45 minute episodes each week. What could possibly happen from here now that he's been like apprehended by the feds and like, you know, she makes it out, she makes it back home. And it seems like every loose end has been tied up. Like Gator is blinded, but like, you know, he's in prison and kind of like serving his time that he recognizes he should be serving.
Right.
And it's just like, it's kind of like all's well that ends well until you realize that's the last loose thread. And you're not even sure if he's going to come back. So it's like when you get to this moment, you're like, oh, yeah, that was the last piece. But when I think she says the line to him, like, you can either, you know, we can either settle this right now or you can go wash your hands and help us make these biscuits. And the biscuits that they end up making look delicious. Just the cut to him washing his hands was like the most like tension cutting, like gut like laugh moment I've had in a long while.
For sure.
It
was a great ending to the season.
Yeah, just them sitting around eating chili, and man, did I want to eat some chili after watching that. But yeah, it was a good season. So let's move to your number 9 pick.
Oh, my number 9. A show that I enjoyed from my main guy, Mike Flanagan. It was The Fall of the House of Usher. Yeah, if anyone's not familiar, this was a show that followed a rich family who starts dying unexpectedly, and it weaves plots and stories from Edgar Allan Poe to tell the story. I mean, Fall of the House of Usher is already a story, and it does kind of use the bones of that story, but it's also using stuff like The Raven, is it the Cask of Amontillado? It's using all the hits, you know. So if you're a fan of Edgar Allan Poe, I recommend it. It was missing for me some of the Flanagan like big monologues. Like I wanted some of that kind of like stuff that people like hate on a little bit, but I think it makes it uniquely him. I would put this as like number 3 for my Flanagan shows. I still think Midnight Mass is my number 1, Ooh. Haunting a Hill House. And then now I think Fall House Usher is definitely a good step. So I'm excited to see what he does next. Hopefully it's The Dark Tower.
Yo, man, I know. It's just another one. I don't know if we'll Patreon that or we'll main feed that.
Oh, that's going to be like a month of episodes.
It might. And maybe that is something we do, is we do a series of episodes to properly cover a very involved franchise that also involves other franchises from Stephen King, right?
Right. So, yeah. If that ends up being like an HBO Max show and they give it money and people get into it, my life will be happy.
Yeah.
I want that to be the Game of Thrones.
It would be good. I mean, even though I would trust Prime or FX or somebody to do that too, but I don't know. It would definitely need some money to make that thing work. But House of Usher, so another show, I think the one reason this did not make my list, because I haven't finished yet. So I kept myself to a very strict rule of like, if I did not finish the season, I'm not going to rank that high. So, but what I've seen so far of House of Usher, I really did like. And it's just a show that my fiance is not a huge horror fan, so I kind of have to take that one on my own. So I think it's definitely one though that I'm enjoying, kind of like peppering in every now and again. And it's kind of nice because you sort of do take like almost an anthology approach where it's always sort of like Usher himself kind of talking about what happened to his next child and his next child or his next, family member who passed away. And I really do like that you can just sort of watch it like that versus binging it, because it's not a super bingeable show, I don't think.
No, I ended up binging it for this thing because I was kind of taking a piece because I think for the same reason that is kind of like you want to digest it a little more slower.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was very pleased with how it turned out with the fact that it was so streamlined and it moved, which like isn't the Flanagan thing. I think that's what I was trying to put my finger on. He'll sit and resonate and like let people act. This has great acting in it, but it's just like boom, boom, boom with the story.
Yeah, for sure. Which I know I really like. I like Mike Flanagan a lot. I think I've had some harsher takes of some of his stuff. I don't know that I was thrilled with Dr. Sleep. I mean, I know you're high on that movie. We've talked about it on the podcast before.
Rebecca Ferguson,
but
main queen.
She's great. I mean, I'm excited to see. I actually haven't seen Dune 2 yet at the time of this recording, but I'm imagining she'll be great in it. She was great in number 1. But I think what I do like about The House of Usher is that he has a very specific vision of how he wants this to go. And I love the whole thematic thing of like Carla Gugino just continually showing up in a very different part each time. And I think trying to ask her to do a role that I think a lot of other like franchises or movies and stuff have relied on like male character actors to do,
right.
Or it's like, oh, we're going to throw, like Eddie Murphy, in like 4 different parts. He's going to be playing something different, which obviously that's a very over the top comparison.
Or I think about in The Stand, like the Skarsgård playing like, that kind of character is kind of a, like, what's this guy's supernatural? Like, how does he know everything? It's kind of, I could see them casting like a Skarsgård and it being a guy, but she brings a lot to the table.
She does. I really enjoy her. I think she's been great in a lot of Flanagan stuff. Didn't he also do Gerald's Game?
Yes.
With Bruce Greenwood too in that one,
and,
too, right?
Yeah, both of them, man.
Yeah.
He that's the other thing I like is he brings people back. Like a lot of the show is just Bruce Greenwood and then the guy who replaced Scatman Crothers in Dr. Sleep. Yeah. Kind of like the stand-in for him is just these 2 old guys drinking like $1,000 scotch, just like talking about mortality. Like, that's when the show's really cooking for me.
Definitely. And you can see that a lot. I think even without having finished it, you can see a lot. I feel like Mike Flanagan was trying to do a couple different things when he first jumped into a lot of this, where he was like, I think because was it Bly Manor, right? Mm-hmm. I felt like it was just a little too slow and a little too, I don't know. It just, as the follow up to like Haunting of Hill House, where like that is like creepy and there's just like a lot of pathos and a lot of what the characters are doing and everybody has something different. I think he kind of rediscovered what worked there without being like, this needs to be the most frightening thing you've ever seen. I think what he's doing, he's zeroing in human characters again and understanding what makes these people tick and why it's so tragic that as much as these are bad people dying, why it's still kind of like, oh, well, you still sort of feel for them.
For sure.
Yeah. So definitely looking forward to finishing that. Pick number 8 then, Fred, is... Oh, I'm sorry. I got to go for my pick 9. Yeah. Well, I have to talk about one show that surprised me, because, well, we'll get into it, but Scott Pilgrim Takes Off was my pick for number 9. Have you seen it yet?
I haven't seen it yet, but that's, again, I want to check it out.
Okay, it's going to be difficult to talk about because I think what works about this show is not knowing what the story is going in. Mm-hmm. But I was a humongous Scott Pilgrim fan when that movie came out. I think that was like I had liked Shaun of the Dead. I had liked Hot Fuzz. Like I thought those were great. I thought though after I saw Scott Pilgrim, I was like, Edgar Wright has just elevated. Like I think he like gets our generation very well. Like he understands like what millennials like. He understands like what's like interesting about what we like. I don't know. And it just felt like that was such a resonating piece. So when they announced that like they're going to do this animated series with all the same cast from the movie and like they're going to bring everybody back, I was like, well, that's a cool idea. I like anime. I know. But I'm like, how are they going to make this unique? And there is a moment where it seems like everything is going to kind of follow same story and all that, but then they start throwing some twists in near the end of episode 1 and you realize you're kind of watching something different and that it is going to actually have its own unique take. And the performances, they're giving a lot of characters that never had a chance to do as much in the movie because it was a movie. Chances to kind of stretch their performances out. You get to explore the characters a little bit more. And it was like a lot of like justice for, I think, a lot of the critiques people even had about the graphic novel that the creator, who is also involved in this, heard and was like, I'm going to remedy these things now. And, you know, understanding that I think people really enjoyed the original work, I have more to say and more to give these characters. And so that's what a lot of makes this series sing.
Nice. I do want to check. I actually forgot it happened. I remember like it was big. Everyone was talking about, but like as the problem with the Netflix and the streaming, then it's gone. You know, And it's like, oh yeah.
Well, I think that was kind of the fun assignment, even with doing this episode, is that I was going to look at shows that came out in 2023, and I was like, that was earlier this year. I completely like forgot how much I love that show because it's so much that's gone, and then you're on to the next thing. And I hate the format of Netflix now. I think I don't like a full season drop anymore. I'm all aboard the shows that are like, we're giving you an episode a week.
Yeah.
Because think about just, and we're not going to talk about it this time, True Detective. Like, felt like some people were behind a little bit, and it's like, oh, I have time though to catch up. I have a full week before people are going to be talking about episode 4.
Now, we always talk about, you and I, like the 2 to 3 episode initial drop and then the weekly drop after that, depending on what you need to set up in your story. I feel like 2 to 3, that's the way to go.
Yeah, you need like an hour and a half to 2 hours of like, here's the reason why you should care about this show, and now we're going to pepper in. You can kind of see how the threads unwind.
Or even, I love an hour and a half first ep. Just give me like a beefy first ep.
Yeah.
And then give me like a second, like I love in the show we might or might not talk about in Last of Us, how they'll just have like a big hour and 20-minute episode, you know?
Yeah. Which it's like, I think they're getting better at like, there's enough story that we need to tell in this chapter. And I think that's kind of, it's almost treating it like a book in a way, right? It's like this chapter is going to be a little bit bigger than the next one because we're just trying to get after this idea and this whole narrative. So I think that was maybe the one thing that sucked about Scott Pilgrim, was that it was like, it was kind of here and gone. But I really enjoyed it. I don't want to spoil it because I think if anybody hasn't watched it yet, it's really fun to jump into, especially if you like the movie. I think you'll love it. And I mean, I know anime is not everybody's cup of tea, but it's so unique in its style. It doesn't feel like you're watching like, I don't know, like Dragon Ball Z or something like that. It's very accessible for people who just even like regular animation. So yeah, that's all I'll say about that.
I will be checking it out. I am excited to get to my number 8 pick because I believe it's also your number 8 pick.
Correct. We did match up here, but you can tell everybody what we're talking about.
Poker face.
Ma, 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 ma. I should say ma, 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 ma. Fred, why was this your number 8 pick?
Because I like old-fashioned TV, and this is old-fashioned TV. This is, you know, like each episode, you know, there is an arcing story, but each episode is its own thing. We're going to throw in a special guest star you haven't seen in a while.
Yeah.
You know, like that's what Poker Face is. It's also a murder mystery. It's Monk, but like, you know, a little better than Monk, you know. But I love that kind of formulaic TV, and this is definitely breaking the mold of it a little bit for sure, but by being made by Rian Johnson and him bringing in all his like, you know, famous people, these are better guest stars than, you know, they had on Columbo, I feel.
Right.
But that's why I like it, because it's doing a throwback and doing it in a fresh way.
Yeah, which I mean, and he talked about it too, Rian Johnson, that like Columbo was an inspiration. Like he watched a lot of Columbo, but he actually did some of that too for Knives Out. And I mean, I'll go on and say this, like I liked Glass Onion. I know that's a very divisive movie, but this felt like the more not appropriate successor, but it felt like the better successor to what Knives Out was doing, of like, we're going to try and reinvent murder mysteries, but we're going to do this with the TV format to where it's like, yeah, you have somebody who has kind of a thing, and Natasha Lyonne is doing a lot of good work in this series.
Definitely.
She makes herself a flawed character who is also very likable, who also sells that she has this like natural ability to like suss out bullshit from people.
Yep, and I think I'd give a shout out to one of my favorite like guesting things in a TV show is I really like Joseph Gordon-Levitt being a complete prick on
Oh,
that
yeah.
show. That was probably one of my favorite because he's a guy I like, but he can be kind of a ham. So I just like seeing him be an unlikable person on the show.
100%. He is definitely somebody too who you're like, well, what happened to him for a while? Because he had his hit record thing that's kind of like, I don't know. The concept is great. I never feel like it's as accessible as it wants to be.
Right.
But I think, yeah, the show worked for me so much too, just because, yeah, you mentioned all the reasons. Like it's like the case of the week. So you're always trying to figure it out. It's the fact that she's not a cop either, right?
Yeah, that makes it better.
Right. It's just like, well, I mean, besides all like, the issues that people have with cops and everything like that, it's so nice to break from that formula of like the detective has to check in with his department or like, oh, yeah, we're going to do a stakeout and do this. Like she works with like some local police sometimes, but it's never like beat you over the head, feels like a cop drama. It's just here's a murder mystery. It's almost like Murder, She Wrote a little bit.
Yeah, it's like Murder, She Wrote. It's also like the Incredible Hulk show. She's going from place to place and there's a problem in the town, you know? Like, it's very much like old 70s and 80s TV. My grandmother, rest in peace, would have fucking loved Poker Face.
I know. It feels like totally my mom's shit, too. Like, she loved Murder, She Wrote. And I can imagine, it's very accessible for a lot of different people. And yeah, I think it's a fun show that I can't wait to see in season 2. I love a road show too. Like you mentioned,
for sure.
Going from place to place, because that gives you a reason to see why are there different guests coming in each week. It's not like, oh, these people live in the same town. It's like, no. It's like she's in Texas, she's in Wyoming, she's in wherever it needs to be. So yeah, definitely a great first season. Yeah, I can't wait for season 2.
Nice. Do you want to do your 7 just to mix it up?
Sure.
Flip it and reverse it?
I can do that. Can you work it? Let's work. I don't even know the lyrics to that song. I'm going to talk about a show that came out this year. Another one that kind of felt like it came and went, even though it was episodic, was Party Down season 3. And for people who don't remember what the series Party Down was, so it's basically about a catering company and the people that work for this catering company. And so in a similar vein to Poker Face, they go from place to place. Each week they are catering a different type of event. And so it's a reason to kind of follow these people, even though they all have their own character arcs. And like the whole idea is like Adam Scott is like a guy who's been working for this company, but he's like trying to break into the acting business. And that's kind of what a couple characters do. They're all trying to break into like Hollywood. So they work in LA. But they all kind of like fledgling, not really making it. And so you have them kind of like going all over and they're just like interacting with these people, trying to like make connections and stuff. And it's just very funny. And you just have some really great performances. Lizzie Kaplan was in like the first 2 seasons, but this show was not very well watched. So when season 3 got announced, you're like, well, that's cool. Because it felt like another like a Freaks and Geeks type show where it's like, oh, it was cut down in its prime. And we never really got to see it really sing. But so it came down without Lizzie Kaplan, who was like, I mean, I would say she's the second lead of the first 2 outside of Ken Marino is the manager of the company.
The MVP of Party Down, I would say.
Yeah. Have you seen season 3?
I've seen season 1 and 2, and I watched the first episode of season 3. But then I lost my stars because, I can't have all these things.
Yeah.
So I think I just have to wait for something else to come on Stars and I'll get a Stars trial to watch it.
Yeah, which that's the other issue with this show is that it's on a network that it's like, why do I have a Stars?
Like I can talk because I don't keep Paramount Plus on deck. I will get it every once in a while. I can talk myself into that because I get Showtime and Paramount Plus together. It's really hard to get me to get a month of Showtime or Stars or a month of AMC.
Yeah. It's like, and if all they're offering is a week trial, I think you can get through season 3 because I wasn't sure what to expect. I did like seasons 1 and 2 a lot. And it's got a lot of people you like I mentioned, Ken Marino is so good in that. And then you have Jane Lynch, who is more prominent in seasons 1 and 2, but she still does show up in cameos throughout that. Martin Starr, who also is from Freaks and Geeks. Megan Mullally and Ryan Hansen, who I think he's a little lesser known, but they added a few new people here for this season, and because Lizzie Kaplan was, I think, she was too busy to come back, so it wasn't like she was like, oh, I had a falling out. She was just like had other projects going on. So they added Jennifer Garner in a kind of a more prominent role, and you kind of like, she's one of those people where you're like, huh, like Jennifer Garner, like I like her, but then you watch her and you're like, she's actually very good, like
Yeah.
and she had very good chemistry with Adam Scott, I thought, in this. And so season 3, it just felt like a more mature versions of season 1 and 2. It felt like you had a lot of actors who were more established. I think they kind of understood too a little more about what works on TV and like the streaming era too. And so you just had a very, I don't know, just every episode seemed to be like getting better and better each time. And you get some great cameos from a lot of different people. Like I'm pretty sure, James Marsden's in like the first or third episode. And it's just, he was doing work this year.
You can get a Marsden.
Right. But then you had some new regulars. So Tyrell Jackson Williams was one who was a very funny character who was trying to be a TikTok influencer, and Zoe Chow, who was on the After Party season 1. Like she showed up as just sort of like a very like artistic type like chef. So they added very interesting characters, and overall it was just a very fun season.
Did After Party 2 happen?
It did. I don't think anybody.
I don't think
talked
anyone. I
about
didn't.
it.
I remember like, who's the cast in this one, and being like, oh, okay, and then I forgot all about it because After Party 1 was like a thing.
I really liked After Party season 1, but I like didn't hear a single thing about season 2.
No.
And I was like, I don't know if that means it's good or not, but it's just lower on the list. It did happen this year. But yeah, Party Down. Very, very fun. I mean, I think it's the best season of the show, truthfully. So
nice.
it's worth getting a Star subscription even for a month. If you get a free month, just go for it. What about you for pick 8?
So I guess I will say my pick, and then we'll come back to it. Or do you want to just talk about it now, and then we'll just say it?
Yeah, I'll just repeat it when it comes up.
Okay, so we'll comment out. My number is 8?
No,
7.
7.
Is beef.
Beef.
Where's the beef? Beef was a show that I just kept hearing great things about, and I didn't check out until like the few months leading up to award season. I think I watched it in 2 sittings, and I would have watched it in 1 if I would have had the time. It was super engaging. It has probably my favorite TV performance of the year, which we'll talk about later.
Ooh.
And I just think it was what I thought was going to be a closed off thing. And, they did announce there is more coming, which it sounds like it'll be kind of like maybe a Fargo thing where it'll be a different story. But I was very impressed by Beef.
Yeah.
Beef.
I do have this on my list. I have it a bit higher, Fred, but I mean, yeah, you hear a lot about Beef this year, and you're like, is this as good? Is this about meat? No. No, it's about people who are beefing.
Yeah, it's about beefing. How beefing's bad. You shouldn't do it.
Yeah, you have Ali Wong and Steven Yeun who are beefing in this show, and the consequences of what a grudge and, not being a sensible person, or maybe just being a lonely person who's looking for any kind of connection, even if it's a very toxic one, can do to you and the people around you.
I don't think either of these characters celebrated Festivus in their life, because they could have really done with like an airing of grievances in their lives.
It's so true.
I got a lot of problem with you guys.
I got a lot of problems with you people. But it was so well done. And it was, a primarily like Asian American led cast, which was very exciting to kind of see some faces that you had never seen before. But then you had 2 people who I think a lot of people had a lot of love for.
Yeah. It does a great thing that movies and TV are getting better about, is you have people in shows of different cultures than what we're used to seeing on TV. And it's not necessarily about that. It's not about their culture, but these things come through the character and the story and the plot, which is how like life is.
Right.
You know, it's like not going to hyper focus on just like my culture. It's me and the things that are coming through. Like, and that's what Beef does really well, I think.
Oh, yeah. I think there's just a lot of nuance in the idea that, yeah, different expectations for different people from different backgrounds, right? And I think there's such an element of that in even like Steven Yeun's story. Like you see, well, I mean, and truthfully, both of their stories, it sounds like, you know, if it's not them, it was the writers who were definitely leaning on some probably moments of their life where they probably experienced this with the type of relationships their parents had and the types of families they came from and the pressures of like what that means when you try to become an adult. And I think the nice thing though is that those characters are still very relatable because it's like when you do get past 30 years old, there's a lot of question marks about what type of person you want to be and what type of situation you want to live in. And it's like, what's best for you? And like, when are you giving too much and vice versa?
And I love a show where, like, for both these characters, it was true. I have a lot of love and a lot of hate for both of them. Like, I got problems, but I feel for both of them too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think the secret sauce for any despicable person in a show is making them at least
Eat 3 hamburgers.
Yeah. But like making you sympathize for them, you know,
Right.
and sympathize like, I recognize you're a bad person, but I also understand why you are this way. Yeah.
And we're not getting too deep with like ending spoilers, but when I was watching the show, the one thing I was like, this can't end a certain way or else the show will leave a bad taste in my mouth. I think it ends and the characters end up in a place that works for me.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a very, in a way, a cathartic ending. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like no one wins and no one loses at the ends in a way.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so I think I'll go next again because then we'll kind of flip back and forward. So my number 6 pick then is Shrinking. Did you catch any of Shrinking?
So Shrinking is a show that I liked a lot, but the day that I started watching it, I got a call that my stepdad died. And that show is very much about grieving, and it all kind of morphed together, and I didn't ever finish it. And I'm gonna finish it. Not like, and then I could never watch it. It was just like, that was a lot at one time, and it felt like, it was intense, but I really enjoyed what I watched. I watched most of it.
Yeah, which I think, okay, so that's sensible too. And plus, I'm in obviously like a difficult situation where it does feel like it hits a little too hard and hits home hard for anybody who's ever lost somebody too. So obviously sympathies to you and your family over that. But I think it is, in a way though, it does provide some catharsis in that because you do see other people who are going through it. And, in this case, it's like, the whole premise is that Jason Segel is a therapist who has lost his wife, and him and his daughter are kind of dealing with the fallout from this. And like, it's really like the people around them that are trying to be the support system. And not everybody's the most capable person because they're not comfortable on their own home front. And you just have some great performances. One that I will call out at some point when we do talk about best performances of the year. But, you certainly have a lot of like awesome people, like Harrison Ford's in this show. I can't talk about anybody else without starting with him.
And it's the thing about it is he's in the show and he feels like a character, and it's amazing to see him, but it does not feel like cameo scenes.
No, not at all.
It feels like he's supposed to be there, which like is hard to do for Indiana Jones, Han Solo to be on a TV show.
Yeah.
And feel like he's actually a character and not the boss that pops up. Like that's a move in a show, is like they'll have some big celebrity and the boss will come up and he'll have like a scene and then like that's it. And then like you might have another one, but he feels like he's part of the fabric.
Right. Yeah. He's not just a guy you put there. Cause I kind of felt like was his role in like Anchorman.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah. It's like, he looks ridiculous. No, he felt like a fully like filled in character. And I think him just doing whatever projects now. I think I loved him just stretching his palette here at the end of his career. He's doing like what I feel like Al Pacino should have been doing for a few years, but he's
Well,
choosing.
he did the Paterno show. He did all the wig shows.
Yeah, and it's just some weird choices. Whereas I'm like loving Harrison Ford's choices like later on, and this was awesome that he jumped into this. You also had another great performance too from Jessica Williams, who is not somebody I knew very well before this. I think some people know her most from Two Dope Queens, and I thought she was really great. Yeah, because she's like the third therapist in the office with. So her, Harrison Ford, and Jason Segel are all therapists kind of working together. But I mean, she was just somebody who I was like, okay, who is this? Who is this woman? And like, because she's great. Why is this the first thing I'm seeing her in? But yeah, very, very strong things. Somebody else too was Krista Miller from like Drew Carey show, which we've been talking about.
Release the Drew Carey show.
Release the Drew cut. But yeah, she's the neighbor who's like trying to doting on the daughter, who's played by Lukita Maxwell. And man, it's just a really solid up and down cast. I mean, even the people who are in the smaller parts are bringing some heat.
They're shrinks. They're supposed to take care of other people, but they can't take care of themselves. It's kind of like that TV kind of like thing, but it's deeper than that. But it's kind of funny. Like that's such like a TV thing, I feel.
Yeah, and I mean, and the subject matter of the show is dark, but it's funny.
It's really funny. Yeah.
It's another one of those dark comedies, kind of like what were we talking about before?
Killing It.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. But yeah, so it's definitely more that vein of like you're laughing more than you are, but then you will cry a little bit more than likely. So what about your 6th pick, Fred?
So my 6, I went with the most recent season of Black Mirror.
Ooh.
And I think I liked to loved most episodes from this most recent season. But I think this made my list just because I was happy to have a full, competent season of Black Mirror. Like, all of these are at least good. Like, and that's debatable for some people. I thought they were all good to great. So I was happy.
I've only seen the first episode of the new season yet.
And who was in the first episode?
Oh, wait, no. First 2, I think. So the first one was... what's her name from Schitt's Creek? Annie.
Yes.
Yeah. And then it was her and Selma Hayek.
Yes.
And then, I think I did watch, was episode 2 where it's like the guy is like looking for like the serial killer house?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought that was pretty good. The one that sings, though, is the one with Aaron Paul and Josh Hartnett.
Oh, yeah.
You got to watch that. Because that's one of those that's like an hour 20. So pretty much... It's a sci-fi movie with those guys in it.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to getting more into it. But so you felt like this was kind of better than the recent season installments?
Yeah, because weren't they like dropping like, well, this season's got like 3 eps and they were kind of puzzling. Like I think the last really good season was the one that had like Jesse Plemons on it. Like that was another one where like I like all of these.
Yeah. And even in that Jesse Plemons season, I felt like that episode itself was strong with him in it. But I thought the rest of the season was like, there's some good stuff, but it's nothing that was like the all-timers from the first 2.
I enjoyed watching them all. But like, I feel like you used to get like 2 that were like, whoa. I think there's definitely 1 in this new season, the one I told you about. But I'd say most of these are pretty fun and watchable.
All right.
Fun for a Black Mirror episode.
Yeah. Which, I mean, look, I'm all for Black Mirror. I love anthologies. So it's like, I love the idea of it that you can kind of keep telling these different stories that sort of follow a similar type theme pattern. I don't know. But yeah, so I'm excited to get more into that. I'll actually take the next pick because then I think this is going to line up pretty well for us. So my pick number 5 was Blue Eye Samurai. And this is the first time I'll be talking about a specific somebody in this show. But the premise of this is that it is a half Japanese, half white woman in Japan who is a samurai, is kind of like traveling, looking for vengeance against a white man who had come and kind of like upturned the countryside a little bit. And really, he's one of four. And without necessarily getting too deep into it, but basically, she's kind of on a vengeance train looking for a very specific guy that she wants to murder. And she's willing to go to any lengths to do this. And it's played by Maya Erskine, and who is also half Japanese, half white herself. And so it's a very fitting role, I think, in one way that she is embodying somebody who looks exactly like her, but also it's like you kind of get to speak to those themes where it's like it's sort of like the line from the movie Selena, where it's like you're not good enough for the Japanese people and you're not good enough for the white people because you really don't fit into either circle. And that's very much how the character is looked at. They're kind of looked at as a demon because their blue eyes kind of separate them from everybody else, but also like she never had her one parent who was the white parent there for her to raise her. So, you know, she leaned on a mom who was not necessarily there. I mean, not necessarily the best mother figure she could possibly be. So it's a very complicated series with a lot of pathos about, you know, like the type of person you become in a time when it was not a society that was very accepting of people, but takes place in like kind of feudal Japan. I think it's a little bit after that too. And man, but it really, really hits hard. It's an animated show. The animation is beautiful. It's very different than any other animation you'll see.
It's on Netflix, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I've seen clips. It looks really good. I do want to check it out.
It is a very good show. Her kind of like I don't know if he's called a sidekick or I mean, it's hard to. He's sort of like her apprentice, I suppose, played by a guy. He was on like Heroes. His name is Masioka.
See the guy from Heroes, like from all the like marketing with the glasses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know who you're talking
he
about.
played Hero on that show. You have like Brenda Song is a very prominent role in that too. Yeah. So you have some very like, I don't know, some very good vocal performances up and down. So I picked two animated shows for this.
I like it.
But it was a show that took me by surprise. I heard a lot of great things. And again, I mean, it's not anime. I would say it's very much its own type of animation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I noticed when I watched it. It looked kind of like it had a little bit of those tendencies, but it definitely looked kind of doing its own animation.
Yeah, it's a very cool story, though. I think there's a lot of shows coming out right now. In fact, there's one that just dropped that's called Shogun that I have a sneaking suspicion we might be talking about if we do this episode again next year.
Oh, we have a feeling.
But
so far, yeah, it's on my list.
Yeah, it's I've only watched the first episode, but I was like, whoa, okay, very cool. Kind of a similar type of vibe overall, but very different story.
I'm happy to know that there's like another actor who's got Tom Hardy vibes.
Yeah.
Because there's Tom Hardy, Logan Marshall Green from like Upgrade and Prometheus, and now we've got whoever this guy, Blackstone. I feel bad like saying like, yeah, I like the Dutch white guy from Shogun, but I'm really digging this Dutch white guy from Shogun.
I mean, he's good. He's good so far, but we'll hold more comments on that till we get there. Do you want to talk about your 5 pick?
My number 5 pick, which this is a pick that I'm kind of wrapping the whole show up in it, is Reservation Dogs, just because I watched it all while like after season 3 finished. I kind of did it all.
Yeah.
And this is a show I really, really liked. And I think the things I like about it was that does the TV show thing where it's starting with the main group of characters and it's breathing out to more characters. And usually I find the new characters not as interesting as the main characters. This is a show where I liked meeting more and more people, and I felt like I was building a community within myself watching the show, and I was starting to figure out the relations of everyone. And that's kind of like a big part of the show, is how these people are related to each other and how they affect each other.
Yeah.
And how the community works. Because it's focused on, I'm trying to think of the area. It's in Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And it's a group of kids in like a reservation area who I like them because they're little stinkers.
Yeah.
You know, they're up to no good. They're in a gang, but they're just like the best group of friends. It kind of gives me, the show is very indebted to Linklater.
Yes. Oh gosh. I mean, two huge Linklater references in this last season.
For sure. I think overall, this is one of my favorite just like 3-season shows where they just kind of did what they wanted to do and got out. What were your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I think it's great. I was looking up where they are located. They're in the Muskogee Nation in Oklahoma. So that's the reservation that they are on. But yeah, I think you hit on a lot of things that make the show work. I think the relationships between the lead characters, the four friends, is so central. But what was so interesting, I think, even especially about this last season, is how much we got to know about the rest of the community, and it was comfortable moving outside of the reservation a little more this time.
Definitely.
Because the very last episode of season 2 was they go to California, and like, so that's kind of like a big piece of like their journey is kind of fulfilling this like promise they made to their friend who passed away. But I liked that we kind of had to pick up the pieces here of like, hey, like Bear, one of the leads, coming back to the reservation, like his journey with like his like spirit guide, and God, that guy is so fun. Incredible. What's his name? Is like William.
I don't know his name while you're looking up. I will say like he would have made like an acting list for me if we did like a top 10 performances. I think he's a big glue for Reservation Dogs.
Dallas Goldtooth is the name. I think that character's name is the like William like Little Knife or something like that. But yeah, it's just a laugh out loud performance every time he comes on screen. He steals the show a little bit. But I think the rest of the performances are great. I love a show that's gonna give just like a lot of like familiar like Native American actors a lot of time to shine.
You get like your guys, you two guys from like all the like 90s action movies in there. You got Wes Studi and Graham Greene.
Yeah.
It was just funny because I watched Heat recently, as one does, and I watched Die Hard with a Vengeance, and Graham Greene's in that one. And I was like, yeah, these guys were definitely just like in some of the great movies of the 90s.
They really were. And it's wonderful to see that cast. I mean, we talked about Zahn McClarnon before and like how awesome he is. And I mean, he doesn't get as much to do this season, but I think he was kind of like, I'm going to get this show kind of rolling and then let everybody else kind of take the reins. So it was just wonderful to see the cast. I mean, and then we mentioned the Linklater episodes or references. Like there's a whole episode that looks like Dazed and Confused, but just involving like all the elders in the community back in the 70s and their youth.
For sure.
Which is awesome. And then you have a whole episode where we do find out that one of the characters' dad is Ethan Hawke. And I love that whole episode.
Yeah, that stood up for me. My wife was, because I told her she should watch it, and she was on that last episode. I definitely pulled up because I was like, I'm excited.
Yeah, it was a great show. Reservation Dogs was actually my number 4 pick, so that's why I had you pick this out, because basically it's leading right into it. So, but I mean, not enough nice things to say about this series as a whole. Awesome performances, great storytelling. I think you learn a lot about the Native American community that you may have never learned otherwise, because I think you learn a lot about the history involving Native Americans, but it sort of feels like once we get to the 20th century, 21st century, there's not a lot out there about reservations and what life is like on there. And so this is a great way to kind of see what it looks like.
Yep. And there was, they were very intentionally trying to convey what Native culture humor is. And I feel that's in the show for sure. There is a very unique comic voice, and they say like, oh, this is like how we make jokes. This is our style of humor. You know, it's kind of like slightly dark with like, you know, talking to people who are, you know, like have passed on, but it's also beautiful. I feel like there's like, they have these little humor jokes where it's like these emotional moments with people who are spirits talking to people who are still alive. And I don't know, it's something special for sure.
It is. And I definitely encourage anyone who's interested to seek out and watch all 3 seasons. If you've not finished it or if you've never started it, it's like,
it's very easy watch too.
Yeah. It's one of the best shows of the past 5 years. I mean, easily one of the best already of the decade. I think.
For sure.
Yeah. So
I think I'm just going to say it's lower on my list because I think I love it all. And season 3 compared to like my other stuff didn't quite cut it. But if we're gonna say of these shows, like top shows of all time, Reservation Dogs goes higher for me. For
Yeah.
sure.
I get it. Totally get it. So why don't you talk about what did rank at number 4 for you then?
I mean, come on. I Think You Should Leave came out with like 6 more 18-minute episodes, and I just love sitting down and just taking that in. Like, I think it's some of the best sketch writing that's out there right now.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and I've only seen the first episode of I Think You Should Leave. I think it was one of those where I found it, I watched it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then it just got sidetracked by something else. So I've not revisited it. I want to, but I don't know. I mean, is there any like sketches from this season that sat out for you or stood out?
I mean, the big one that I think people keep sharing is the one where he's at the drive-thru and he's like doing the thing where he's gonna pay for the person behind him, and he's just being very like, I'm gonna take care of the guy behind me, you know?
Yeah.
Pay it forward. And then after he pays, he speeds around, so he's the next person. He's like, I want 55 hamburgers, 65 fries. Like, I'm sure you've seen that meme.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I love that. It's not from this season, but I can never stop laughing at the one where he's in his car and he's just like stuck in traffic, and the guy's like, what's the problem? You don't know how to fucking drive? He's like, no, I don't know what any of this shit is. I'm scared. like that's the dumb humor of the show, but it's the thing that makes me laugh the most. And I will just go back and rewatch episodes because they're like 18 minutes long, and they're like 3 or 4 sketches. So like you watch the season in a sitting.
Wow.
And it's a whirlwind of some great humor, and obviously like any sketch show, not everything's gonna maybe hit for you, but like no one's writing sketches like these, and you can tell this is like a big movement. The dude just mounted like a giant show. It's not happening yet, but he announced a show in Chicago. It's sold out instantly.
Yeah.
Like, and he's going to be doing sketches with the other guy that he writes with. And I'm just like, oh, wish I could be there. But I Think You Should Leave. I think that's the best sketch comedy going right now.
Yeah. Tim Robinson definitely is bringing it. Is it Zach Kanan who's his writing partner?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That's
But Sam Richardson, I think, is the one guy who did that show, the show that they did, Detroiters.
Oh yeah.
Those two are doing the live show, I think.
Oh wow. Well, that's definitely yeah, I'm excited to see that. I think I guess hear more about how that goes, but I'm excited to just see the actual show itself and more of it, because I feel like it's hit, like just penetrated into pop culture so prominently. So many people talk about it, and yeah, I was just like, man, I keep forgetting those guys are all Detroit guys. Like,
And then when you the new thing like that film people love to make the comparison is that his acting style is just like, his name is, who's from Doctor Strangelove, The Exorcist 3. He talks like George C. Scott.
oh yeah,
His performance style is very George C. Scott. And if you watch I Think You Should Leave and think George C. Scott at times, it matches up. Like him in Doctor Strangelove is very like I Think You Should Leave, Tim Robinson.
I could kind of see that, and I think Kubrick did catch George C. Scott his goofiest in that movie.
Yes.
I do love though that you're like George C. Scott. So he's in Doctor Strangelove and The Exorcist 3. Not Patton, not like all the other great roles.
I was trying to think of the one where like he's like his daughter like ends up like in the like dark of New York 80s and he has to go find her, and he's like an old cop.
Sounds like Taken.
Yeah, it's pretty much like the original Taken.
Yeah. Well, let's go to pick number 3 then, Fred, because we actually also matched on this one. It is The Bear.
The Bear.
The Bear. So The Bear season 2. Those who aren't familiar, The Bear is about a man who worked in fine dining, decided to come back to Chicago where he took over his late brother's business, making beef sandwiches. It's a little sandwich shop. And the whole premise is that he wants to kind of make it more like a fine dining place, to the point where the whole premise of season 2 is that they are trying to make this new restaurant and completely rebrand it, recreate it. And what a riot. What are your thoughts on The Bear?
I love it just because I'm a food person. I love to cook, and I'm someone where like I feel in a different life. That's probably what I would have done as been a chef. I just don't like to stand for long periods, and I don't like to get yelled at.
Yeah.
So that's what kept me probably from like pursuing that life. But that's why I love watching the show, because it is kind of like that life. I feel season 2 really heightened season 1. And for me, it has one of the best episodes of television of the year. I'm trying to like do like my Oscars thing almost, like giving little awards. And I'd say best individual episode would be the one where his cousin goes and stashes at the fine dining place.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was one of the best episodes of TV.
I thought you were going to say the Christmas
That
dinner.
one I love, but I still think that one's my favorite.
Yeah, I would actually agree with you full-heartedly. And that was actually the episode that I was like, oh, this is going next level. Because, yeah, it's the guy they call Cousin Richie is played by who's now going to be the Thing in Fantastic Four, Eben Moss-Backrack, I think is
Yeah, which I gave him a lot of props for this show. But I thought he was like British playing Chicago.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I thought for the longest time he was a British actor.
But, yeah, he's just a straight up just...
It seems he's a little that guy, and now I don't give him that much credit.
Yeah.
He's still great.
He is, but yeah, he's so good at playing this role though. And that whole episode where he's working in the fine dining restaurant, he's picking up all the tips, and he starts to learn like why people care about this thing. I still kind of have some, I don't know, misgivings about the whole idea of fine dining in general. I'm kind of more in that mindset of like where, what was it? The menu, like, what is that of like, why are people so, and this is, they take
Right.
it way too seriously, but it is fun to see the curtain pulled back and see him just like really get into it when he knows this is supposed to be like his punishment in a way.
And I just feel like Richie and I could like talk about shitty movies because he's got a white Squall poster in his apartment. Like, of all the Scott movies.
Yeah, it's him though going down the road singing Taylor Swift that I think really just like hit the note.
Doesn't he have like the like Miami Vice Michael Mann like reference with the go fast boats mojitos thing?
Yeah, he definitely does. Oh God, and there's so many good actors. I mean, Jeremy Allen White plays the main character. So here we're talking about the cousin of Kami playing Kami, and then you have Ao Edebiri who is playing Sydney, who is kind of like Kami's like. Well, I mean, she was like the new kid on the block in the first season, and now she's sort of his co-conspirator and making this whole thing happen, and their tensions and them trying to like align and all, and you just feel like so much of this feels real, even though you know it's like, oh, okay, obviously it's being over dramatized, but you kind of get the pressures of like what it feels like to run a restaurant, and man, and it just, I think everybody is so well cast and just awesome up and down the board.
Yeah, I was very happy with it. I'm happy there's going to be more.
Yeah, because it just feels like it's one of those shows where it's like that premise is so simple. You're like, well, but now they open the restaurant. What could happen now? It's like, well, yeah. Now what happens is exactly what we want to know. Okay, so now you got the restaurant. How are you going to keep this thing afloat in a world right now where trying to keep a restaurant open is very difficult?
All right.
Yeah. So, yeah, The Bear. Great thing. I will just throw out that my number 2 pick was beef. So we talked about that already. I don't really have anything else to share on that front. I mean, I thought it was as good as advertised, and I think that's why I ranked it so high. I was just very, very pleased with everything that came out of it. I can't wait for more. I hope we keep seeing some different perspectives, though, too.
Right. Definitely deserved to clean up at the Emmys. And
Yeah.
It did.
It did. So why don't you get on to your number 2 pick?
My number 2 was the last season of Succession.
What?
Yeah.
Fuck off.
Fuck off. So I think I won't talk long about it because I feel it was kind of boring that Succession did win all the awards. I kind of wish that they had the approach to TV they do with like movies like The Return of the King, where they kind of like held off the awards, because I do feel this last season was kind of a culmination of the other seasons where it's really hard to end a TV show.
Yeah.
And this is a same thing with beef, where when I watch Succession, it's all horrible people. I am fascinated by watching them. If this is going to end, it has to end in a way where I feel like good about where people are and where they should be.
Mm-hmm.
If this ends with people on top in any way, it's not going to work for me. And the way they do it is like, and I'm not going to say what it is they have it where some people win, some people lose, but it's like their own worst hells. It's like the monkey paw of getting what you want.
Yeah.
And just being able to finish a show where I don't know anyone who followed it didn't think they nailed the ending.
Oh, wow.
And I do really think it's a show that did really well talking about like the issues in like our elections and politics without feeling like I'm being taught about politics and this and that. It felt kind of ingrained in the show, and they almost kind of they kind of talk past it to make it seem more real and not just like twiddling like the hands like this is the evil guy.
Yeah.
It's the banality of evil, which big theme for movies this year and kind of in TV, I guess, too.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of the show. I think, I know he did get some noms, but Kieran Culkin kind of got to do like fourth dimension acting in this season versus just being like the, little like young brother goblin of it. So it was nice seeing some more from that show, and I was happy that it ended well. I was definitely bored by the awards circuit of it.
I mean, and I guess so. I have not watched the last season of Succession yet. I mean, I liked the first few episodes or first few seasons, and I mean, it's definitely one that's on my list. It's just like I think it's one I need to kind of like mentally prepare for. I also kind of want to move away from it far enough where can forget about some of the plot points I heard, so that I can come at it fresh. Like I know, there's like a major death that happens during the season, and I was sort of like, oh, it's a bummer. That's like actually what kind of like killed my whole momentum of jumping into it.
Yeah, and I think that was actually the juice of the show too, like of how and when they do that too.
Yeah, which I mean, because it's a lot of the premise is based on that, but I think, you look at all the performances there and look at all the things that everybody now is going to be doing. I mean, I'm excited to see way more of Kieran Culkin after that, too. I mean, I know he's been around forever because obviously him and his brother were in Home Alone, but.
Yeah, I'm excited to see more of him for sure. I'd like to see more of the creative team because it's, I think they did the show like the thick of it in the UK, and then they came here and made Succession. So I'm excited to see like that group of English people to come. What are they going to do next?
Yeah, because I was actually trying to remember. So, because the writers were
Mark Millar.
Yeah, and I was trying to remember. Did he do something else that was pretty prominent yet, or is this kind of like his first big thing?
I thought he was also a writer on that, The Thick of It, and that was like the Peter Capaldi politics show in England.
Oh yeah.
That was very similar, like quick talking,
Well, he has directing credits. I'll just say this, and so this could maybe change some things. Shameless, Entourage, Game of Thrones. And he directed The Menu?
Did he? Mark Millar?
He sure did.
Oh, which you can definitely see that aesthetic.
Yeah, so I mean, I am definitely very much a fan of that tone. I like that we just talk about The Menu and be like, oh yeah, he directed that.
And something that we're getting towards the end here. I don't want to add too much time. Something we didn't talk about. Great theme.
Oh yeah, good theme song. I mean, I think you're right though. It's never overly preachy, but also depicting kind of like the difference, like even in like class and society, and like these are like a lot of white people problems, right?
Right.
And I think it does such a great job of that. So definitely excited to visit that. Like I said, and I have a little more distance from it.
Like Arrested Development, but what if sad?
Yeah. So let's get to our number one pick, Fred. Do you want to reveal it? Because we shared this one too, which was very exciting.
Ellie.
It is The Last of Us, a adaptation of the video game of the same name, about two people who are in is it a zombie apocalypse?
No, it's not zombies. I feel like that's what every horror person who does zombie adjacent work, they will 28 days later, they're the infected. Okay. So I think these are the infected.
They are the infected, and they are infected by a a virus that is, or essentially a parasite. It's like fungi, and like the idea of like these like mushrooms that can like take over your body and make you act like a zombie, and or you're trying to eat other people and all that. And it's definitely it's a very dark world, but like Walking Dead, it's very much about the survivors. I think this to a much more successful story than The Walking Dead has done, because I think you get to really care about the relationship because they focus on less people. It's about Joel, played by Pedro Pascal, and you have Ellie, played by Bella Ramsey, who are just trying to survive. And I mean, we can reveal the main plot point, right?
Yeah.
So Ellie is the only person on record who has survived getting infected. She is immune. And so there is an idea that perhaps there is a group of people who could manufacture her blood or whatever into a cure for this infected world. And it's very much about the people and not the zombies, which is what's so good. So what are your thoughts overall on Last of Us, and why is this number one for you?
I think this is like kind of like similar to my Black Mirror vote, where I'm just excited that it's a video game adaptation that's like not only isn't bad, it's really, really good, and it's given the respect that a video game adaptation deserves with how much work was put into it, the thought and the characters. I mean, these games are pretty much movies and shows before they became adapted into a TV show.
Yeah.
I think it did enough where it added new stuff, but also like it gave you like you're seeing the live action version of what you've done in the game. It gives you those moments, but also it feels like it's not just trying to be the game or trying to be its own thing. Because I think that's the biggest problem with video game stuff, is it's either trying to be too different or too the same.
Yeah. And I think that is something this did very successfully to a degree. I mean, even the game did itself. I think the biggest reason it was as successful as it was to start on, even on PlayStation 3, was because it was presenting a story first that felt like you were really caring about what you were doing and what was going to happen to all these people. It's not novel for a game, but I think it did it better than most games ever did up until that point. Because it was very much about, how's the game play? How does things do it? But no, this was very much like you were watching a movie that you were interacting in. And so this time they're like, well, we're just going to make that thing in live action so that, you don't have to worry about the encounters and trying to shoot off all, the infected that are trying to attack you. You're just able to kind of live in the moment, and you're like, fuck, it's really dire. And it's dark.
It is, yeah. I think a big positive for it was also adding in like the Bill story, taking its time with it. And I'm excited to see in season 2. I have a feeling they're going to be doing more of that, because I think they're going to want more than one season out of the second game.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, and if you have not played the second game, you know that there's a pretty natural way to tell a 2-season story stretched out.
I was just saying, I was like, there's an event I could see very much being the end of the next season.
Correct. And I think that is, going to be exciting to see just how they're going to adapt it. I mean, there's so much to this. And I think, I don't know, it's a very nuanced show. I mean, I've used the word nuanced a lot, but I think you can't speak enough about how they made a world that felt big feel even bigger, and it felt live, and it was filled with more characters like the two people we were following, and not just like, here are the people they're interacting with. So
yes, I have been holding off, but I am due up for a rewatch of it. I'm excited to go back through it, because it kind of was a lot to take in each week, because I am such a fan of the games, that I think it did kind of like wash over me the first time. So I'm definitely planning to go back through and watch it again.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited. I'm excited to watch it again. I'm excited for season 2. I think there's going to be a lot to it. So that's our top 10 shows. Fred, we had a couple other categories that we wanted to cover, and I figure maybe we'll do this next one. We'll just kind of go back and forward real quick. And then I think, for the last category, we can just list our rankings, because those are performances. But one bonus one I did want to add in is there a show you saw last year that didn't actually come out in 2023 that you loved?
So I am going to throw out a thing that I rewatched that I would recommend for people, which is the Netflix Dracula 3-part miniseries. This is like, I feel a show I was the only person that watched, even though I feel like most of my friends were pretty big Sherlock fans. And this is the same creators. It's the guy, who plays Sherlock's brother and Mark Gatiss or whatever. No, that's Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat, the Doctor Who guy. Pretty much taking the Dracula story and doing like their spin on it. There's 3 distinct episodes that are like an hour and a half-ish long. Klaus Bangs plays Dracula, and it is a great. It's probably up there in like Dracula performances too. I am surprised no one has seen this.
I feel like this was another show that just missed me. I was like, it sounds like something I would be very interested in, especially because Stephen Moffat was involved with it. But yeah, I think it just sort of like missed the mainstream.
The second episode is pretty much the Voyage of the Demeter, but the good version. I mean, I didn't see the new movie based on reviews.
Yeah.
It's that, but them doing it. And it's very kind of like technical. I don't know how to describe it better than that. Like, I don't know. There was almost like a scientific way to how the story was shot and told in the Sherlock show.
Yeah.
Kind of matched like Sherlock's vibe. It does that with like the Dracula vibe. And
Where does this rank on your Dracula adaptations?
I don't know. That's a tough one because
Yeah.
I got a lot of love for. I would just say I'm gonna give it to the OG for number 1 just because it's the OG. But I love the Coppola Dracula for all its problems.
Yeah.
But this might be the third. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what other Dracula like other than just like Van Helsing or something.
Yeah.
That's not in the top 3.
I mean, it is tough though. I know I threw a curveball at you, but I also wanted to just note that, like, yeah, I think it sounds cool. It's like a great creative staff, a team that I think could do they've done adaptations justice with Sherlock. I think especially the first couple seasons, but I think you have a great cast there too. I mean, I'm just looking at the details now and I'm like, okay, I feel like I need to add this to my list.
Definitely.
It sounds great. I'm going to go ahead and just share mine quick because I feel like I've talked a lot of people's ears off about this, but the show Pen 15, which also stars Maya Erskine from Blue Eye Samurai, this time in live action, but playing a 13-year-old version of herself on screen. So it's all live action. But yeah, her and her co-conspirator, Anna Konkle, they both play 13-year-old versions of themselves in this show in the year 2000, which is they're in 7th grade. That was the same exact year I was in 7th grade, year 2000. So I felt like every reference, everything they were trying to do really hit from that regard. But then, so the fun part of the show is that they're with all like kids who are actual 13-year-olds. And so there's just a lot of humor in the fact that they are these 2 grown-ass women playing pretend with like these kids who are actually going through these experiences. But I think that the show has a lot of heart because they kind of speak both from their both personal upbringings, like going through like parents who are divorced. And on the other hand, you have one who, again, Maya Erskine is playing a mixed race, child and going through the pains of having to be somebody who doesn't look like everybody in school. And just like their experiences with being bullied and having to go through dating and all this. And I thought it was just a lot of things that even as, a white man who is, in 7th grade, I felt a lot of that same experiences with bullying and everything that really, really hit home for me. And it was cool to kind of see them kind of tackle that. I'm like, kids are mean. Protect your kids if you're a parent, So it's like, I don't know, but I think it was very funny too. And it's a show that kind of started very humorously and suddenly became very like, kind of felt more real. And I thought it was cool, but they never lost sight of what they wanted to do. And they got very experimental in a way that felt a lot like Reservation Dogs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
What is this streaming on?
this is on Hulu.
Hulu. Oh,
Yeah.
right.
So definitely worth checking out. Both of the women are very funny. And yeah, I'm very excited to keep seeing what they're going to be doing. In fact, I'll probably be talking about another show that one of them did this year, but we got to keep moving. So let's go into our top performances of the year, Fred. Do you want me to rattle off mine and then you talk about yours?
Let's do it.
Yeah, I want to give you the hammer here.
Ooh.
So we kind of talked about two of these already. So I'm just going to go into depth, I think, on one of my third performance. So number one, and I'll start with the top this time, Harrison Ford in Shrinking, because for all the reasons we said, he was so good. I loved him doing a TV role. I love the way you put it. Like he felt like a character in the show, not like here's the star of the week, kind of like Judi Dench and fucking Elizabeth or whatever that was. Yeah, or not Elizabeth, Shakespeare in Love. But number two, then Natasha Lyonne in Poker Face. I was like, for how much sometimes it feels like she's doing very similar characters. I think when you watch that and Russian Doll side by side, which I think we kind of got a very close proximity between Russian Doll season 2 and Poker Face, you realize how much more she is doing in Poker Face. Of like, she's still kind of doing her New York woman, you know, and like, but like, I think in this case, it felt more like she really had the idea of like, I am somebody who's not necessarily comfortable in my own skin, because I have this unique ability and it alienates me immediately. But then she still finds these connections. And it felt like she was just warm enough without feeling like somebody that like was just, oh, you know, very friendly, very cool person. Just like that type of person, like interesting person that you always tell stories about. Like, and I love that she embodied that character.
I would say everyone to check out her on Conan O'Brien's podcast. It was a great episode.
I would love to listen to that.
Talks about her filming Scary Movie 2 with Marlon Brando before they decided that he was too sick to do the scene and they replaced him with James Woods.
God, what a story. Like, I can't imagine what that's like. So I'll give just a little extra time to this third pick because I gave it a tie. And it was also a show we did not talk about. And it kind of, I like this show a lot. I realize it's not the prestige TV show, even though a lot of people love it. And I liked it a lot. It's Yellow Jackets.
Oh.
So season 2 of Yellow Jackets aired. And I mean, one of the great performances from season 1 is Christina Ricci kind of back. Like the whole gimmick of like the show is that they're grabbing all these like girls who were very big in the 90s and they're very good actresses that never really kind of got the same kind of roles once the aughts rolled around in 2010s. So it's kind of bringing all them back. And Christina Ricci plays an awesome role of just sort of a very like neurotic and sort of like psychopathic nurse. But they made the move this year to pair her up with Elijah Wood, also somebody who kind of like after Lord of the Rings kind of kicked around a bit.
Yeah, I feel Melanie Linsky probably gave him a call. I feel they're always in stuff together.
It does feel like that, yeah. But they paired him and Christina Ricci up to the point where you're like, have they been in something together before? Like how? But their chemistry was just pop. It was crackling. I was like to the point where I'm like, I would watch a show of just these two going around being kind of like these weird, like sociopathic individuals who are trying to crack cases using like Reddit forums and stuff. And so I mean, the whole thing is they're trying to find like this sort of like cult retreat that a few of the characters from the first season are going to. But it's just their banter and like the way that they both are like embodying very kind of like yin and yang of characters that are very similar. It was very fun and worth watching the show, I think, just to see them go.
Yeah, we thought we watched all of season 1. We put on the first episode of season 2 and we didn't know what was going on.
Oh no.
So we think we liked it, so we're gonna rewatch season 1 and season 2. You know, we're probably just gonna do a rewatch.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was just too much time in between, or maybe we just didn't watch the last 2 eps and forgot or something, but we threw it on and I was like, I don't know what's going on. I threw up my hands.
Yeah.
Literally.
That's visual cue for all the audio listeners here. Fred, what are your best performances of the year?
So I went with number 1. I have Stephen Yeun in Beef.
Yeah.
I thought this is probably my favorite performance of the year in anything.
Wow.
I just think he was super. I mean, when's he bad sort of deal? He's a guy who, like, I would never watch Walking Dead, but I think really when he popped in Nope, I was just like, man, more, please.
Yeah.
And he is just a guy you feel you have a lot of pity for. he's an asshole. He does horrible things, but like I feel you can see it all in his eyes and face. You can see the calculations of like what he's about to do, and I think that's why I have it as like high on my list. Number 2, I have I don't have my list in front of me. Is it Paulina Alexis, who is in Reservation Dogs. I think she's kind of like the center. She is not the lead. She kind of at times gets less to do than some of the people on the show, but I think she's kind of like, it's gonna say the lamest thing. She's like the heart of the show. She's the heart of Green Book. Yeah. But she is, because I feel like she kind of has this like positive and negative to her with how she goes about things in the show. But she's always the glue that kind of keeps them together. She's very funny. And she's generally the one who is not getting emotional. But in the last season, she kind of, she goes under the apprenticeship of Fixico. Yeah. And I think that storyline just really highlighted her range for me. And she just always makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Like, I love her characterization in that.
She's so good. The character Willie Jack is what she
Willie
plays.
Jack.
And she's my favorite character in that show. I love her so much. And I was like, she's one of those people who are like, I cannot wait to see what else they get to do after this show, because she was just great. And I think it's not unfair to call her the heart. I think you could probably argue that, like, there are a couple characters who could have been the heart or who were presented as that. But I think
it's not even the heart. It's like just the center. And I feel like everyone else is kind of like they go out and then it snaps back to her kind of. She is like, she represents the reservation. Yeah. Like she is the person who's kind of content. She does have moments like she wants to go to Los Angeles, but I think she's the one that kind of sees like the benefits of the home and the community towards the end. Definitely. And I think that's the arc that I really connected with.
Definitely. Yeah. She's fantastic. Great pick.
And my number 3 is Bruce Greenwood.
Yeah.
In Fall of the House of Usher, who the whole show is like kind of like I said, him pouring like a fancy like whiskey and like telling some guy like this is how everything went down. This is why it was bad. And like he does have like emotional moments towards the end, but I just think like pretty much the show is hooking everything onto him telling the story. It's kind of like the McConaughey of True Detective, you know, like
for sure.
This is what we're doing to tell the story of the movie. If this performance doesn't work, it's not gonna work. Him just like gravelly, just like, I'm worried about my kids.
But he sells it so well. And I'm excited to see more of that, just to see how he wraps it up. Another great pick. I love it. And I think that gets us to the end of this Patreon episode, Fred. A little beefier to start, which I think was a good selling point on what people can expect to come. These episodes might get a little bit shorter, a little bit tighter, but I think we wanted to start off hot, and and obviously I think we're releasing this one for everybody right now, but we want to encourage you to sign up for the Patreon. I think, rather than give you all the social links, you can obviously find all our links in the link tree, but look for our Patreon. We're going to have it in the description here. We hope everybody signs up and felt that this is going to be worthwhile, because we want to keep doing more episodes like this. And so stay tuned. So the next episode in our main feed will be on the Milwaukee Brewers.
That was a baseball bat hitting a ball.
That was a beautiful sound effect. God, this is the type of shit you get on Patreon, folks. You can't get this anywhere else. And then the next Patreon episode we're going to do is the best video games that we played in 2023. So we'll have some 2023 focus, but there might be more of those types of like Dracula and Pen 15 type picks.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll see you guys then.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming. Hope to see you next time.
Yes, all I wanna do is charge my phone, drive, listening to you. And what they told you about will always be